Okay. This is lesson 6, mindfulness and silence. So tonight, what we're going to talk about, meditation and silence. We're going to talk about the 9-year change. We're actually going to do some sitting, which actually at this time of night, it's good. It's a good practice to have before you go to sleep and when you wake up. So this is good. And you know what? I had the experience to go into a mindfulness room today, and I'm really fortunate that I work really I'm a substitute teacher when I'm not doing other things. So I feel like I always want to have one foot into education just to see what they're doing. And I knew that they had a mindfulness program in my son's school district. And so I actually am friends with the woman who runs it at his school. So I went and I looked in her room today, and it was really, really awesome. It was so awesome. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to review what the mindfulness room looks like. And it's been some attention on like social media where people start, passing around an article about a mindfulness zone in, Baltimore, and, it's gotten some attention, but I really want to talk about, this is not in the manual, but I think the next edition that I do, I'm going to add in the mindfulness, how to establish a mindfulness room in a school or somewhere, because I think more and more schools are doing it, and I think it's such a good idea. So in other words, instead of a child going to, when I was going to school, when you got in trouble, you went to the principal's office or you went to the vice principal's office and you talked to them, and that was the process. The way that they do it here for the mindfulness room is that they actually, before it gets to escalated to the principal, they go to the mindfulness room first. And we'll talk about what elements of it makes it a mindfulness room and what they do and what are some good suggestions about establishing that. And then at the very end, we're just going to talk about, this is the wrap up of mindfulness. This is like week 6 of mindfulness, and we're wrapping it all up. We're going to jump right into the yoga part next week, and we're just going to kind of wrap it up and see what the important elements of this is and how to implement it on so many different levels and kind of make it applicable to what you're using it for, so we can, so it's just really clear. I really want everyone to walk out of this program with this like clear idea of how it could practically be used. I always like that feeling that I'm getting something that I can really use and that is useful out in the real world. It's not just up here in this space, it's actually out there that can be used and very practical and very useful. So we'll end there. So let's jump into the 9-year change. I love talking about the 9-year change.
So, yeah, I remember we talked about it in Savannah.
Yeah.
Or at Seven Centers.
So Waldorf teachers really, really educate their parents about the 9-year change and what that means, and what they really encourage their teachers to do in the Steiner and the Waldorf system is to educate their parents on this really important developmental stage of life for children. And so I'm going to talk, I think the first 3 or 4 facts that I'm going to tell you is just, and some of these too because we've talked before on this. So this is all review for you. The last 3 of them are just going to be spiritual background. So when I was studying to be a Waldorf teacher, we had the 9-year change was a huge topic. We had, there's a lot of information out there and it's not just a Waldorf thing. Although Waldorf teachers, Steiner trained teachers go through and they really dive into it, and they really study it, it's actually, if you, any kind of developmental psychologist, and even in education teaching, when you're taking developmental psychology, they mention the 9-year change. It's just that it's forgotten. It's like, it's not really, public school teachers, if I talk to a public school teacher now, and they wouldn't even bring it up, but it's like on a daily basis, as a staff, Waldorf teachers really, really take it seriously and kind of look at, there's these like elements that of a child, they look at these signs to see where the child is developmentally. So it's not just something that was taught in a classroom. It's something that Waldorf teachers take, and they really, really try to analyze their students based on what they know with the 9-year change. So the 9-year change is the end of the childhood where the children's the ego is not completely developed. So at this point in 9 years, the ego, and it can be 8, 9, or 10, and the ahamkara, the ego, completely develops and settles into the density of form and density of the body. And it becomes apparent, there's this transition period from where the world is all about my mom and me. So they have this relationship with the mother before this that's really, really deep. And it's their play and their actions are imaginary and light. And there's a lot of this lightness and imagination and artistic behavior, and there's all of these, everything we would expect from a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. When we look at them, we see them that they're not thinking, and now I'm putting a more of a Montessori spin on it, but Montessori teachers talk about it too. I heard more about it in Montessori as well. So, but when I was a public teacher, didn't hear anything about it. So in Montessori speak, when the 9-year change has come into transition, they can really, really think through abstract. They're starting to think abstractly. So they've bridged from first grade, second grade, and third grade. They need concrete, and it's all hands-on. And then suddenly when the 9-year change happens and there's that developmental part, the abstract becomes easier. So they're just starting to learn abstractly. So for example, if you're teaching a first grader or second grader how to add, they need the manipulatives of blocks, and they need the manipulatives of number sticks or things that they can touch and they can see. But that's the concrete. And through the concrete, then they can go to abstract. But beyond the 9-year change, when the ego is settled in, they suddenly have this more ability to think abstractly. So they're able to think of more abstract theories and philosophies, and they're able to picture things in a different way, that it doesn't have to be exactly concrete. So Steiner and Waldorf teachers focus on it. Montessori teachers focus on it. Now, the characteristics of a child when they've gone through the 9-year change, and usually at the 9-year change, there's usually an event around it. There's usually something, some sort of event in the family, or there's an event that kind of transitions the child, whether it's just family changes or whether it's something else. It's usually an event that kind of shapes and forms and changes. Most of the time people remember that when they're 9 or 8 or 10, and they remember something that sticks out, that like had changed them, that changed who they are. And so when the ahamkara, or when the ego really comes into that form, the child changes. they their mood changes, their energy changes. So their energy may be a little bit more tamasic or lethargic. Like it's instead of the world, before that point, the world was just family and me, the me. And suddenly, during the 9-year change, there's this bigger world and there's this earth that they're settling into. And it's some children, all children react to it differently, but some children really react lethargic to it. Like, really? I'm part of this earth, and they're they really need special guidance at this time. They need special guidance to be able to relate to the earth in a healthy way. So this is where children really start getting, how am I going to relate to the earth at this time, at this 9-year change? It's a really important, these are really, really important years because they start to establish their relationship with the earth and with each other. So at that time, there's a lot of guidance that's needed. There's a lot of eye-to-eye contact. I remember talking about that in my Waldorf training, said the eye-to-eye contact during the 9-year change, they may like look down and they may divert eye contact, but it's really the role of the caregiver, or the parent, or the teacher to make that eye contact with them, because it's even more important to make that eye contact to make them feel more stable during that time, to make them feel more welcome to the earth, to make them actually connect in the earth. And community being part of the earth, establishing a community and establishing a trusting community, that's a part of that whole process. But everybody has a different timing with it. So the other side of the 9-year change, there's just kind of like, it starts. There's some sort of apex to the event of, oh, I'm changed, I'm part of this earth. I'm not, it's just not me and my mom and my dad and whoever else lives in my house. And there's this realization, there's always some sort of realization about being part of the density of the earth. And then it tapers off and it goes down. And then there's this identification where it's no longer just me and my mom, it's me and the world that I live in, me and my community. So that's really step one in being part of the collective. And then it kind of culminates, like it kind of gets going. And then when adolescence comes, then it goes the complete opposite way of, it was me and my mom, me and my mom, me and my mom. And now it's like, no, I don't want any. It's like the attitude completely changes. Now it's me and my friends, me and my friends, me and my friends. So it's from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. So that 9-10 time, that 9-year change time is going to be like the foundation of how the adolescence comes in and how that relationship to the community comes in. So when it's come back down from that apex, the soul or the spirit of the child changes, and it doesn't change. It kind of just becomes more established. Okay, so at the end of the apex, when it's coming back down in the 9-year change and the transition is kind of taken its route, the child should come to this realization that, wow, okay, I'm here. I know what I need to do. I'm connected to my purpose. I know my dislikes and my likes. I know what kind of direction I'm going in here. I have established good family member relationships. I have established good relationships with my pets or with the people in my household or the beings in my household. So always there's this, it's starting. There's this realization, an event that's happened, then it goes down, tapers down, and eye contact is really important during that time. And then at the end, there's this some sort of establishment of, okay, I'm here. I'm actually here. And that's a soul recognition. I think that's what the Waldorf and the Steiner teachers really drilled into. I mean, it's like soul recognition. This is a time where they start, the spark of the soul really is very, very, like, it's just starting, like, okay, I think I know what my soul feels like. I think I know what my soul, like, what the spark is there. So there's that soul recognition at the end of the 9-year change that is the foundation for adulthood. So it's fascinating when you're assessing children, when you're looking at children. Make this into an exercise for yourself. Did they go through a smooth 9-year change? You know, are they? I mean, I can look at children and I can just assess them and analyze them. I can say, oh my gosh, that one was, you know, it did not go smoothly. And sometimes children don't want to go through that change. And I'm going to say that again. It's really interesting. It's like they don't want to go through that climax and that realization, like they're avoiding leaving that fantasy and that playful aspect. And, you know, if we can explain to children that it's all part of life, we all go through transitions. We all have to get out of that, it's mommy and me. It's actually the world is a huge world, and there's a lot of beauty in it, and there's the next step that needs to be taken. So I remember when I was a school teacher, and I didn't know that much about the 9-year change then, but in reflecting back on it, I was a school teacher in Phoenix. I was in the ISA school district, and I remember this child. I was a 6th grade teacher, 5th grade. I think I was a 6th grade teacher, and so 6th grade, what age is that? That's like 9, 10, 11, 12.
11.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they should be well away from that apex and well on the other side of the like the transition. But I remember this one student I had, and he did not want to cross over. Like, and it was really interesting because everything in his body and everything in his school, or even his schoolwork, and I remember him saying to me, I don't want to grow up. Like, he was just, it was something in his eyes. He's like, I don't want to. That was his thing. He didn't want to grow up. He didn't want to do. And I just, that really, really settled. I remember that so clearly, that he just looked at me and he said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to grow up. And it was some sort of soulful thing in him. Like, he did not want to take the next step into his own growth. And it was like everybody was trying to push him, you know, all the teachers were, because, I mean, he had that mentality, he didn't want to grow. So it affected everything. It affected him learning. It affected him being away from his family. Like, he really did not like being out in school. He always wanted to be with his mom. And, you know, I think that's very sweet. But at a certain point, there definitely has to be space, you know, for children to create their own personality and for them to have their own life, you know. And so I remember him, he missed so much school. He did not want to be away from his mother. And he definitely did. I just remember him looking and saying, I don't want to grow up. Like, I don't want to do this. And there was such resistance. And I know that was him going, like, he's about there, but he knew the change was happening, and he was trying to control it so much. And he was trying to resist that transition. But I mean, if we apply it to, so adults equivalent would be Saturn returns, right? So we have 2 major Saturn returns, and this is kind of a side note. The Saturn return is first on like the 28 to 32 time period. And then there's another one later on when in the 50, like 50, I think it's 54 and 256, like it's in the 50s. So we have these 2 major Saturn returns in the adult life. So there's definitely the adult equivalent to this would be someone not wanting that. I mean, during my Saturn return, my first time around, I had my son, you know? So I had to really, this level of maturity into adulthood was a whole nother level. So, and a lot of people during that time, 28 to 32, I mean, if you look back on it, what was going on during that time, 28 to ages 28 to 32, can you think of anything like life changing?
Well, I mean, yeah, I went through a big breakup, a big move.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it
So
was pre
Saturn,
my husband.
yeah, so Saturn is working in that way. And it's so, this is interesting. It's so funny. Like I love Parks and Rec. You know, that's one of my favorite shows. And they actually mentioned it in one of the episodes. It was kind of funny. So it's getting a little bit more known. I think people know a lot about Mercury retrograde, and they know a lot about Saturn return. So it's just like on the adult side is like, I'm resisting these changes. I'm resisting having to make these changes. It's okay. Make these changes during certain times. So, but it's really the role of us, at least for the 9-year change, to give them that kind of smooth environment for them to experience the 9-year change for themselves. So for Jaden, my son, during his 9-year change, he had a major surgery, and that was really, really profound for him and for us as his parents. So it doesn't have to be, in some cases, it doesn't have to be as extreme as what I'm saying. In some cases, it could just be very, very small and simple, like, you know, moving your toys out of your room and giving your childhood toys away and changing that, changing your room in that way. Or it could be, it could be in the physical too. Sometimes children physically feel different. Of course, they're physically changing, but during that time period, the changes and the body changes, they really, really take it to another level. Like they really just, I remember I had a student, and I was a Waldorf teacher at this time, and for her 9-year change, she felt it in her bones. And she used to come into class and she would say, I feel, my bones feel strange. And it really, really bothered her. And I just felt like, and I had a mentor at that time in the Waldorf system, and they said, yeah, that's just a developmental step that she's really, maybe for the first time, she really, really could feel the growth of her bones and the growth of her body. And that's the realization of her 9-year change. And that's what's the difference. So I'm gonna move on from that. There's a lot of information out there in the 9-year change. There's a lot of information. You have the book of Yoga Education for Children, and Satyananda talks about the 9-year change. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the silent meditation practice. So I'm really glad it's you and me, because I think that we both can really benefit from sitting in silence and just having,
I love it.
Yeah, just having some time. I was actually going to start with 5 minutes and see, but now that I know that you've sat longer than 5 minutes, how long have you sat for, and what are you comfortable sitting for?
That's funny. The max I've sat for is 4 hours.
Oh, great. So have
I what?
Have you done Vipassana? Or do you do some other type of?
I don't know, honestly, the styles that I would call it, but I've done a lot of sitting in my life.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
I just actually was at a retreat where we meditated, a couple times a day for an hour.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Sometimes lying down, sometimes seated, but
Right. Okay, so I'm so excited about this. So that means that because it's you and me, that means we can sit for a while.
yeah.
Because I absolutely love practicing the silent meditation, and I do it about consciously. Like I consciously do it. Sit down in the meditation. Everything. I do it about 3 or 4 times a week.
Okay.
But I do mindfulness more, like the being aware of my breath, all that. I try to do that every day. So I do a
Me too.
combination of both. For children, this is so hard. It's so hard for them. Um, I'm going to just go through just a little bit about applying this to children. So it's the key to it for applying it to them is the age. Their number of age is the number of minutes that they can sit for. I don't recommend teaching children that are not ready to sit silent meditation or mindfulness. I don't recommend it. I had a friend who, she was so lovely. She volunteered in my classroom, but she forced the silent meditation on them before they were ready, and it never worked. I mean, every time she tried it with them, it was like more burdensome for them than something that they actually felt like was useful for them. So I always try to bring them in on it and having them make the decision with me, like saying things like, okay, do you want to try something new? Do you want to sit for a minute? And I never start really with their age. I actually just start with 1 minute or for 2 minutes. And honestly, that's all they can do. It's quite difficult for children to be quiet and to be silent in a meditative seat. It's quite difficult for adults to do it. You know, I just happen to love it. You know, I feel like the benefits of it is so amazing. You know, it's just really amazing. And I'm sure you feel benefits to it as well. And it goes on and on and on and what they're finding for the silent meditation. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning with Sarah Lazar and her work at Harvard, and she's a post-grad professor that does all the research on meditation and everything. But it's actually activating the gray matter. So I will actually go into the scientific background of meditation before I'll talk about anything else. And in fact, in schools, I never mention Vipassana. I don't ever mention Zen meditation. I don't mention any of those things, because it's just not necessary. So, do you want to sit?
Sure.
And you can actually sit with the camera on or the camera off. I'm going to keep I'm going to take off my camera, but I'm going to keep, I'll start it with it on, but then I'm going to stop it, and then I'll keep my microphone on.
Okay.
I think
I'll probably move myself because I'm on like a Chase lounge, and then so I probably won't be on the video, but I'll at least have my headphones in so when it's time to come back.
Yeah, no problem. I think we can sit for actually 30 minutes. Are you up to 30 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Be good for me.
Yeah, we'll talk more about this later, but it's just, you have to practice it in order to teach it. That's just with everything. And so, okay, great. So I'll kind of gauge it 20 to 30 minutes, but I really feel like because it's you and I know you already have a practice, that the 20 or 30 minutes is going to really just
no problem.
Great, yeah. Okay, so
okay.
I'm going to put on the timer. So I highly recommend always having a timer. So whatever seat you'd like to start with.
Whatever what?
Seat. So whatever seat you like to take.
Okay, probably. Almost ready.
No problem. Usually in silent meditation, you're either seated or on your back body. And like all other mindfulness and meditation practices, you begin by inhaling and exhaling and directing yourself completely to the breath. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm going to starting right now. So this is a big part of meditation. It's being able to, your hearing sense becomes so much more uh, strong. That's like very apparent. And if you could get used to hearing sounds instead of thoughts going wild, although thoughts you can hear in the beginning, thoughts can go, 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 go. It kind of tapers off more than when you meditate. But the key is to, one of the keys is to really meditate on sounds, listen to silence. And again, everybody's experience is a little different with it. Also, I found if you can relax in it, it makes it a lot easier as well. The relaxation key is a really big part of it. I remember going through Vipassana, and that key, I don't think I ever really, it took me days to really figure that piece of it out, was how important relaxation is and how important that the hearing, the listening to silence. And also, if you could just inhale and exhale, and if you keep track of that inhalation and exhalation, that's also a big important part of it. So for kids, it's so much easier for you to explain it to kids once you've practiced it often.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it's I always think it's interesting that people who haven't practiced it so much, they teach it, but then they teach it from a place that's not actually authentic. So it's really important to add that piece to it, to have your own practice. And that was just 30 minutes, but it felt so nice. Like it just felt taking that break. And it's really, I always end, I kind of know I can time things out, and sometimes I'll look and I'll glance at the time, but I always end with loving kindness, the loving kindness meditation, and taking that meditation out to the, I visualize different people, or if I'm going through conflict, or I kind of bring everything in at the end just to kind of do a summation of it. But that's rather complex. I don't know if I think children can do loving kindness meditation, but I think that it's hard for them to begin with, to be in silence. So I think it's more important just to do one little piece at a time with them, to take those steps. So that was lovely. That was great. So that's my dog, my sister's dog, actually, Lucy, who wants to come in and join the class. So I might let her come in. She could be a therapy dog if she really wanted to. Come on, Lucy. So Lucy, come here. Lucy, come here. Say hello to Crystal. Come on. So this is Lucy.
Yeah. Aww.
Yeah, she's
so sweet.
She's such a sweet girl. She was saying, I want to come in. I want to come in. I want to come in. You can't lock me out.
Right. You've got good energy in there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another aspect of it. The dogs and the pets, here you go, sweetie, they love meditation. Do you see that as well with your dog?
Especially my older dog, because I used to meditate more with him around, we would actually include him. And the first time that I ever ohmed with him, he was so curious. Like he kept putting his mouth up to mine and just was like so curious about what was going on. It was cute.
Oh, so special. Yeah, they just, you know what, they resonate with meditation. They resonate with mantra. They just really, they just really, really enjoy it, and they want to be part of it. And it's so sweet to see them be part of that process. So that's the silent meditation. I think I could have easily gone another half an hour and like just really just loving the practice. And I feel like it's important for not so much the time that we teach children how to do it, like the timing of it. I mean, like it's not as important as they do silence for 10 minutes. That's not the important part. If we could just give them a little seed that it exists, I think that's the important part. Because think back, you were 12 or 11. I had no idea that any kind of practice like this existed during that time. But I think it would have really opened my heart and called to my soul if I was just introduced to it, just a little bit of it. So if we could do that for children, if we could just give them the knowledge that it exists and it's out there and it's a possibility, I think that's doing the best we can. But I don't know if I said this earlier in earlier classes, but I don't really think meditation is for kindergartners, first grade. I mean, this type of meditation, I really feel like
after the 9-year.
Yeah, after the 9-year change, I think that this is an advanced study. I think children have to be prepared for it. They have to be ready for it. I think that it's not something that we should take lightly. So when I see pictures of young children meditating, they're usually children that are prepared to be monks. That's what I think. But that's not, I don't know children who are prepared to be monks. That's not in our culture. That's not here. So we need to allow them to go through the 9-year change, and then we can teach them what we need to teach them and what they're open to learning. And we can't force it on anyone. We just be flexible with it and really be this practice is so advanced. They really have to have a choice in it and just kind of being willing and enthusiastic about it. So that's all I'm going to say about silent meditation. So just 2 more things. So let me just think if there's anything else I wanted to say about meditation with children. I talked about the hearing. I talked about the breath and the nose. I talked about the just the listening part of it. I think I have everything. So I want to go to the mindfulness rooms. So the model that I've seen is that instead of a child going to the principal or going to get like disciplinary, whatever it is, a lot of times they've acted out in the classroom, and then the teacher has this power struggle. I've seen this over and over again. They have this power struggle with the personality of the child, and so the child is asked to leave. This is all really not Love and Logic too. So there's a program called Love and Logic, and I'm going to write it here on the chat bar. And Love and Logic is, I put Login Logic, is a program of managing children and parenting and classroom management. And it's one that I really resonate with a lot, and it follows a lot of what is really intuitive with me already. And in Love and Logic, so in the regular traditional model of disciplining children, there's this model of punishment, and there's this model of expelling a child, or all of this, suspending a child, and through different levels of punishment. So that's slowly changing in American public schools. And so now they're seeing that instead of doing those types of steps, to essentially what they're trying to do is have a punishment model. So that's what traditional public schools do, is that there has to be some sort of punishment. So Love and Logic says that there's a consequence, a natural consequence, that actually we don't have to implement such a punishment in a way, in that the punishment in itself is a natural consequence of the whatever action is being taken. So like if a child, this is an extreme case, but if a child doesn't make their own lunch, let's say they're 12 or 13, they don't make their own lunch, they just don't eat, and that's the natural consequence of the situation. Or let's say if they this is another extreme situation, but if they they kick sand to a child and the other child kicks sand to them back, that they just have sand in their hair, that's a natural consequence. Like there's the whole thing with love and logic is that natural consequences are just there, that adults actually don't have to interfere as much as we do. So the mindfulness zones that people, so in this particular district that I've observed, is that they, instead of going to that escalated punishment route, they're actually being sent to a room, and they're actually being sent to the room to, and the one that I observed, it had aromatherapy in it. It had like these really comfortable seating. You would never think that it was like a detention room. That's not the feeling of it at all. It's more of a reconnection room. It's more of a taking the time to reflect on the actions, and it has it's very quiet. It has very, very soothing music in it, and the whole thing, it had a theme in it, and the whole idea is that a child needs that buffer. It's more of a buffer place to kind of reflect and seriously reflect. And there's a qualified teacher, mindfulness teacher in it that gets special training in order to run that room, and in order to kind of act as like a coach, like a personal coach on how to behave and how to self-reflect and how to take that personal responsibility route in a situation. So in establishing a room like this, it doesn't take all the responsibility onto the teacher, which traditionally really has been, or the principal. It puts the responsibility back into the child's hands, and it's another tool of empowerment. So it really is, I really do think it's an impressive way this is all part of what we do. This is all part of what we've learned. It's an impressive way to do a mindfulness program, do it very, very exclusively for those children that need that extra help. So all the practice I've talked to can be used in that mindfulness room, but it also is, so the model that I've worked with mindfulness is with big groups. I've done it with 4th graders all the way to 8th graders, and I've always taught it with big groups and kind of managed it in that way. But this model is kind of, okay, it's a specific action and reaction model where it's escalated in the classroom or in a situation, and they're being sent to the mindfulness room in order to rectify that situation and to come to some sort of reconciliation or some sort of solution to a problem that they have. So I think it's really special. I think it's a great model for schools to have, and I'd love to see more of it done in schools. Although I've never run a room like that before, I think it is a lot better for children that need that attention, honestly. And it's not a counselor that runs it. It's not like anything like that. It's just a person that has the special training in mindfulness and has the special training in social emotional learning. So I think that's a good way to use the skills that we've learned here and that we're going to keep on learning. Yeah. So, and it had aromatherapy in it. It was just a cool room for the kids to go to and just have that time of pausing. When you take kids out of an environment that's may not be the best for them, you just have them in an environment that's safe like that. I think that sometimes just makes all the difference, especially for the older kids. The older kids, when they have that peer pressure or when they're so concerned about the way they look or what they're doing with their, that kind of, they're so ultra aware of themselves in 7th and 8th grade, one little pimple and they freak out and they don't want to be around anybody, so to take them out of that environment and to put them into an environment like that. And I was actually in there when I was observing the room. I was in there when a 7th grader just came in and said, I just want to read by myself. And the mindfulness teacher was like, yeah, you can read by yourself, that's fine. And I I talked about introverts and extroverts a couple of classes back, and I just think that it's another great tool for introverts to be able to actually be introverts. I mean, school is such an extroverted activity. You're always asked to perform, you're always asked to present, you're always asked to be extroverted. I really feel like it's another route for introverts, and mindfulness in general is an introverted activity. So it's just really it's just an example of how children can self-care, like that whole concept of self-care, and how children can empower themselves in certain situations. So that's my little take on the mindfulness rooms. I really think that they're great, and I think that I really hope that more rooms pop up like that in schools. I think it's happening. I think it's actually really happening.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one more thing on the homework. It's practicing the silent meditation. And again, I mentioned Sarah Lazar's work in mind-body connection of meditation. I would look up her. I put it in the website in the homework page, and just kind of reflecting upon the importance of silence, reflecting upon how silence plays a role in meditation, and how the lack of silence in society, how does that play out, and what is that perspective? It's really interesting to, especially when I mean, Phoenix is a big city, but when I went to New York, and it is definitely the city that does not sleep, and there's so much sound, so lights and people everywhere. It's definitely an international city. You get a whole new perspective on noise, so kind of seeing how that role of activity and the need for silence and that relationship with each other. I mean, you could say, yes, there's definitely need for silence, but even going further in it, and what does it look like if we had that level of activity all the time, and the noise stress that it puts on ourselves, and just the environmental stress of having noise all the time. So it's really an exploration of the need for silence for the homework. So any questions on that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The only thing that did come up for me, that I don't want to forget, you said there's a homework page on the website. Am I missing something?
Oh, no, I'm just saying on this one. I don't have a homework page.
Oh, I thought you said website, and I was like, I'm really confused.
Oh, okay. It's okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but I think I was telling you, Sarah Lazar's website is on this homework page.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, maybe I'm not on that page.
Okay, it's okay. I'm on page 50.
Yep, I see it. Yep, okay. I was taking notes on a different page, so when you said that, I was like, hey.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. I'm going to underline that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal, so much.
Thank you. Did you have any luck with the videos yet?
Not yet. What videos do you need? Can I write that down?
I only need one right now.
Okay.
Which was like, I think 2 weeks ago. Let me look at my calendar here.
I think it was the one, was that?
It was the October 8th.
That was lesson 4? Yeah, I think that was lesson 4. You didn't have the full lesson on introverts and extroverts, did you? I don't think you
I don't
did.
think so.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
that was lesson 4. Okay. Okay, I will get on top of that this week.
I think the older I get, the more of an introvert I become.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like I just feel like I can only take big groups in really small doses,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep,
But
me
I
too.
but
Hmm.
I love being out in camping situations and just being kind of by myself, and like that really feeds me a
Me
lot.
too.
Yeah.
Me
So
too. And that's been growing more and more for me.
yeah. Yeah. Well, same time next
Hmm.
week. Thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. Hopefully the others make it. Have a
Yeah.
good night.
You too. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.